Welcome back to Panda Detective Bureau, the podcast where we break down real-life mysteries, unsolved disappearances, and cases that raise more questions than answers. Today's episode is one of the most debated modern mysteries in America. A case filled with bizarre clues, impossible physics, missing surveillance footage, and a note taped to a computer screen that has puzzled investigators for over a decade. This is the story of Ray Rivera, a man who vanished after receiving a single phone call, only to be found days later in circumstances that defy logic. A rooftop with a hole, a body that shouldn't be where it was found, a perfectly intact phone lying next to the suspected fall point, a strange note referencing movies, secret societies, and coded phrases, a company enforcing silence, and a police ruling that almost no one, including Ray's family, accepts. This case is a labyrinth. It was May 16th, 2006. Ray Rivera was away from home earlier that day, busy with work and meetings. Around 6 p.m., his wife Allison, who was out of town for business, tried calling him. Ray didn't pick up. At first, she thought he was still working, but as minutes turned to hours, her concern grew. Ray always returned calls. He was reliable, consistent, and attentive, especially now, just 6 months into their marriage. Ray wasn't the type of man who disappeared for even half a day without telling someone. Allison tried again. Still no answer. She called home and asked a close friend who happened to be staying at their house. "Can you check if Ray is home?" This friend often stayed with them, so the request wasn't unusual. He replied, "He left around 6. He took a phone call, said, 'Oh shit,' and rushed out of the house. He hadn't come home since." This was the last time anyone saw Ray alive. Around 5 a.m. the next morning, the friend called Allison again. Ray didn't come home. Allison's heart dropped. She immediately returned to Baltimore, calling family members on the way. Everyone began searching the city, posting flyers, contacting hospitals, calling police. But for nearly a week, there was nothing. No calls, no credit card usage, no cell phone activity. Ray had simply vanished. Police checked mobile records. Ray's phone had no outgoing signals after the night he left. They checked his bank accounts. No withdrawals, no charges. For someone as responsible and communicative as Ray, this silence was alarming. And then Allison remembered something else, something that would later seem very important. Just days before Ray disappeared, their home alarm had gone off. At 1 a.m., the system triggered loudly. Ray, tall, athletic, usually calm, was trembling when he went to investigate. Police came, inspected the house, and dismissed it as a possible animal triggering the sensor. But the next night, at the exact same time, 1 a.m., the alarm went off again. This time, a window downstairs was open. No fingerprints were found, but that didn't mean much. The person could have been wearing gloves. 2 nights, same hour, same alarm. Then Ray disappeared. After 6 days of searching, on May 22nd, Ray's family finally found something. His car. It was parked in a downtown Baltimore parking lot, a lot near the Belvedere Hotel, now a condo building, and the headquarters of Ray's employer, Stansberry and Associates. A parking ticket was placed on the windshield. Timestamp, May 17th, the morning after Ray vanished, meaning his car had been there the entire time. Inside the car, nothing unusual, no signs of struggle, no direction about where he went, just parked like he intended to return, but never did. Ray's friends, desperate for answers, wanted to widen the search. They climbed the tallest parking structure nearby, hoping to spot something unusual from above. And then, one of them noticed something strange on a lower structure, connected to the Belvedere building. A hole, a perfectly sized hole, large enough for a human body to pass through. That hole would become the center of the entire case, and what was found beneath it is where this mystery truly begins. Ray's friends alerted the building staff about the hole they spotted in the structure connected to the Belvedere Hotel. Building security opened a locked meeting room below the hole, a room that was rarely used. Inside, they made a horrifying discovery. Beneath debris from the fallen ceiling lay the remains of a man who had clearly been there for days. It was Ray, but almost immediately, investigators realized something was very wrong. Forensic analysts stated that Ray's injuries were consistent with a high fall, but the pattern of injuries did not match. The apparent trajectory, the height, the angle, or the flight path necessary to reach the hole in the roof. This is crucial. Medically, Ray's injuries resembled a fall from a very high place. Physically, it was impossible for him to have jumped to that location from any accessible height. Let's break down why. To fall through that roof and land where Ray was found, he would have needed a horizontal distance of 40+ feet from the Belvedere's upper ledge to the point of impact. Multiple experts tested the scenario: physicists, structural engineers, investigators, documentary analysts, and all concluded human beings cannot run fast enough in that confined space. There is no visible platform with enough room to gain running momentum. The distance is too far for a fall without external force. No rooftop access points line up with the hole. No eyewitness saw anyone on the roof. No security camera shows Ray entering rooftop areas. Simply put, Ray could not have jumped, slipped, or run into that hole on his own. So if he didn't reach the hole by himself, how did he get there? This is where the case becomes even stranger. Near the impact point were 3 objects: Ray's phone, his eyeglasses, his flip-flop sandals, and all 3 were almost completely undamaged. Forensic experts later pointed out, a smartphone dropped from waist height usually cracks. Eyeglasses break easily under minor impact. Flip-flops aren't designed to survive heavy stress. And yet, Ray's phone had 0 cracks. His glasses had no broken frames or lenses. One flip-flop was bent but not torn or crushed. This raised a disturbing possibility. Were these items placed there after Ray died? Because if the items didn't experience the fall, did Ray experience it either? The Belvedere had security cameras. However, on the days surrounding Ray's disappearance, the camera system that covered rooftop access areas was not recording, malfunctioning, disconnected from power. The exact wording changed depending on who investigators spoke to. What's certain, the most relevant cameras had no footage, and the missing footage aligned exactly with Ray's disappearance window. This coincidence was impossible to ignore. Normally, when a person falls from a great height, blood patterns, broken objects, impact marks, debris, distribution, all help reconstruct the fall. But in Ray's case, no blood on the roof, no blood around the hole, no trace indicating where he fell from, no drag marks, nothing disturbed on the roof ledges, no footprints on adjacent roofs, no scuff marks. It was as if Ray simply appeared in the room below. Which brings us to another anomaly. Ray was found wearing his flip-flops, his casual clothes, and accessories he typically wore daily. He looked like someone who had stepped out of his home for a quick errand, not like someone preparing to climb a roof, to run across ledges, to access a restricted building area, to jump. Nothing about his clothing or behavior matched someone who intended to access a dangerous rooftop. Despite all of these contradictions, the police initially leaned toward probable suicide, but the physical evidence told a different story. Friends and family rejected the suicide theory strongly. No history of mental health issues, newly married and planning future events, working on new projects, no signs of depression, no suicide note. The note found at his desk wasn't a suicide note. More on this in part 3. Nothing in Ray's life pointed towards suicidal behavior. So if Ray didn't jump, what happened? During the search of Ray Rivera's home office, investigators found a sheet of paper taped to the back of his computer monitor. The document was unusual. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a diary entry. And it definitely wasn't a traditional note someone would leave behind before disappearing. Instead, it looked like a mixture of movie titles, names of people Ray admired, philosophical statements, references to clubs or symbolic organizations, personal mottos, and sentences that resembled coded thoughts. Nothing was arranged in a narrative. Nothing formed a clear message. To police, it was simply strange. But to Ray's family, it looked familiar. One thing became clear immediately. This was not a suicide note. It contained no apologies, no goodbyes, no emotional outpouring, no statements of guilt, no references to ending his life. Instead, the writing seemed more like a brainstorming page, an artistic exercise, a personal list of inspirations, a symbolic code of conduct Ray liked to write for himself. Ray was a screenwriter and filmmaker at heart. His friends confirmed he wrote things like this all the time, and importantly, police and the FBI never classified this as a suicide note. A large portion of the note referenced films and filmmakers Ray admired. The Game, The Matrix, National Treasure, Fight Club. These films share themes of hidden truths, mysterious symbols, questioning reality, elaborate puzzles. Exactly the kind of stories Ray loved to analyze or recreate in his writing. These references were not alarming. They were consistent with Ray's creative personality. The note also contained names of various clubs, fraternal groups, and historical organizations. On the surface, these looked cryptic, but Ray's family explained. He was fascinated by symbolism. He loved decoding movie references. He enjoyed creating fictional societies for scripts. To ensure YouTube compliance, it's important to clarify. These references were not linked to real-world secret activities. They appear to be creative or symbolic, not factual. Police later reached the same conclusion. One part of the document read like a set of personal rules: how to face fear, how to honor commitments, how to grow as a person, how to conquer weaknesses. This section sounded like a self-improvement list, a motivational code, or a character outline for a screenplay. There was no indication of danger or distress. Instead, it sounded reflective, like something Ray wrote to inspire himself creatively or emotionally. The note also contained names of Ray's friends, prominent writers, directors, people he admired. There were no negative comments, no signs of conflict, only appreciation. It resembled a list of influences, not a list connected to the case. The last sentence of the note read, "I stand before you a man who knows the rules." It sounds dramatic, almost theatrical, like the line of a movie character. Ray's friends said he often wrote dramatic lines as part of scripts, creative prompts, or short film ideas. To investigators, this line was not a threat, not a clue, just another example of Ray's writing style. Due to public speculation, the note was later reviewed by the FBI. Their conclusion: no codes, no hidden messages, no signs of mental distress, no connection to Ray's death. It was simply symbolic, artistic, disorganized creative writing. No part of the note helped answer how Ray died. Even though FBI dismissed the note as harmless, the internet did not. Online discussions questioned why the note was taped to the computer, whether the structure resembled coded writing, whether the references meant Ray was working on something secret, whether Ray knew something he shouldn't have. But again, there is no evidence for any of these theories. The note's content matches Ray's past creative habits. Police never linked it to foul play. Still, the note remains one of the most iconic symbols of this case, a mysterious artifact that adds confusion instead of clarity. On the night Ray disappeared, May 16th, he received a phone call at home. It lasted only a few seconds. A friend staying with Ray and Allison overheard it. He recalled that as soon as Ray answered the call, Ray reacted with sudden urgency, saying, "Oh, "Oh my God." Then he grabbed his keys, rushed out of the house, and left in his SUV. He never returned. That phone call is widely considered the last outside communication Ray ever received. Investigators traced it, and the source of the call turned out to be extremely important. The number was traced to the offices of Stansberry and Associates, the investment newsletter company where Ray worked. More specifically, the call came from a main switchboard shared by many employees. That meant it could have come from anyone in the office. It did not identify a specific person. The company said they couldn't confirm who made the call. Police requested cooperation from the firm, but multiple journalists and family members later stated the company was not eager to help. He's fined in mask. To stay YouTube compliant, this is not an accusation. It is a summary of public reporting. What is important is no one ever stepped forward to claim they had called Ray. Not one colleague, not one employee, not one anonymous source. The last person to ever speak to Ray remains unidentified. Before Ray moved to Baltimore, his childhood best friend, Porter Stansberry, had invited him to work at the firm. Ray accepted. He moved cross-country with Allison and began writing and editing content for the company's newsletters. But soon after his arrival, there were signs Ray didn't feel comfortable in the role. Friends later said he felt out of place. The job didn't match his creative personality. He was looking for new opportunities. He hoped to return to filmmaking. Still, nothing suggested he was in danger. 4 years before Ray's death, the company's founder, Porter Stansberry, had been involved in a civil case brought by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. To be very clear and YouTube compliant, this was a civil financial case, not a violent crime, not connected to Ray's death, and not proven to involve Ray in any way. However, because Ray worked there, some people online speculated whether he might have learned something troubling, been stressed by work-related issues, or been indirectly affected by office dynamics. Again, these are public speculations, not established facts. After Ray's body was found, journalists tried to interview members of the firm. Multiple reporters later stated no one at the company would speak on the record. Allison, Ray's widow, said they shut their doors. They stopped answering questions. Police also reported difficulty obtaining interviews. The company later stated it was cooperating, but no employee ever admitted to making the final phone call. Also, no one claimed to have seen Ray the day he died. No one provided new information. No public statement addressed the unanswered questions. This silence created a vacuum, and the internet filled it with theories. One detail that raised eyebrows. During the investigation, police arranged to interview a specific coworker who might have had information. However, on the day of the interview, investigators were told the coworker was no longer available, no longer willing to speak, and eventually unreachable. Police reportedly never spoke to this individual. To this day, no explanation has been given for why the interview didn't happen. Ray's family asked several logical questions. 1. Who called Ray? Why won't anyone claim the call? 2. Why did he react with urgency? Ray wasn't the type to run out unexpectedly. 3. Why did he drive straight into downtown Baltimore? Was he meeting someone? 4. Why was his car parked near his workplace in the Belvedere building? Coincidence or arranged meeting? 5. Why did no coworkers step forward publicly? Did they know something they felt unsafe sharing? To be clear, these are questions, not accusations. Different people, from journalists to online investigators, have suggested possibilities. Theory A. Workplace meeting gone wrong. Ray may have been urgently called to meet someone he trusted. Theory B. He was given information he shouldn't have had. This is purely public speculation, nothing more. Theory C. He witnessed or learned something unsettling. Again, this is unproven, but widely discussed in documentaries. Theory D. The call was a setup. Someone may have used the office switchboard to ensure Ray answered. Theory E. Completely unrelated personal matter. The call may have involved something outside work entirely. Police never confirmed any theory. Almost every major mystery in this case connects back to that one phone call. Because if Ray had not answered it, he would not have left the house, would not have gone downtown, and would not have ended up at the Belvedere. Everything leads back to that moment. And the silence surrounding the call has only amplified the mystery. To understand why Ray's death is so baffling, you have to understand the structure of the Belvedere building. Originally built in 1903 as a luxury hotel, the Belvedere is full of old service tunnels, sealed doors, restricted access areas, locked maintenance corridors, private club rooms, multiple rooftop elevations, architectural renovations spanning decades. It's a maze, and nearly every possible path Ray could have taken leads to a dead end. Literally. Investigators tried reconstructing how Ray could have reached the only point high enough to produce his injuries. They examined rooftop doors, stairwells, mechanical access rooms, emergency exits, old service elevators, fire escape ladders. Almost everything was locked, restricted, or only accessible with a key card, or employee authorization. More importantly, none of these access points aligned with the hole Ray fell through, not even close. Ray could not have walked to the location above the hole. There was no walkway, no flat open area, no jumping point, no balcony, no ledge with enough runway to build momentum. It would require superhuman ability to even attempt it. Physics experts online and in documentaries have recreated the fall. Their conclusion: Ray would have needed a running start of 40+ feet, but the only rooftop area large enough to run was separated from the hole by walls, raised structures, HVAC equipment, and sheer distance. Any of these obstacles would disrupt a running approach, meaning a fall from the Belvedere roof cannot reach the hole's location. Even professional parkour athletes said it was impossible. When investigators entered the abandoned meeting room where Ray landed, they noticed something odd. The room looked like someone had picked up debris, arranged fallen plaster, removed certain larger fragments, possibly swept parts of the floor. Yet Ray's body had supposedly been lying there for days. This raises a question. Did someone enter the room before investigators did? And if so, why? How? And what did they remove? The room was supposed to be locked. Only staff had access. Despite the building being partly residential and partly occupied by various businesses, no residents heard a crash. No workers reported unusual sounds. No alarms were triggered. No staff reacted to a ceiling collapse. A body crashing through a roof should create noise, dust, vibration, disturbance, yet nothing was reported. Was the room simply ignored? Or did the fall not happen when people assumed it did? Security cameras inside the Belvedere were working in some areas. None captured Ray. He was never recorded, walking through the lobby, using elevators, entering stairwells, accessing restricted areas, which leads to a troubling possibility. If Ray wasn't seen entering, did he enter at all? Or was he brought there? Again, this is not an accusation, but a genuinely puzzling contradiction. This detail often goes under-discussed. The Belvedere's elevator log for the night Ray disappeared showed unusual activity. Elevators were stopping at strange floors, moving without call button activation, operating in sequences, inconsistent with normal usage. While this isn't definitive evidence of foul play, it raises questions. Was someone using a staff access key? Were elevators being overridden? Was Ray on these floors at any point? Did someone try to avoid the cameras by using service routes? Police could not determine who used the elevators that night. If Ray had fallen from the 11th floor ledge, the penthouse balcony, the rooftop parapet, he should have struck outer walls, landed on lower roofs, hit structures that block a direct fall, but the meeting room hole is located in a position where no direct downward path exists from any accessible point. Investigators attempted multiple hypothetical trajectories. Every model concluded no natural falling path leads to that hole. Something else had to happen. Next to the hole, Ray's flip-flops were found, but one of them told a story. The heel of the flip-flop was bent and damaged from behind. Experts said this happens when someone is running and being pulled, or when someone is moving fast but dragging their foot, not when someone jumps or falls. In addition, the flip-flops didn't show fall damage. If Ray had jumped, they should have flown off or been destroyed. Instead, they looked like shoes that had been worn during a struggle, removed manually, or placed intentionally. We returned to the strangest evidence. Ray's phone and glasses were found intact, professionally intact, as if they were, placed gently, or survived something they physically shouldn't. A falling body cannot protect a phone. A fall from that height cannot leave glasses unharmed. So the objects were either A, not with him during the fall, P, placed afterward, dropped separately without significant force. Any of these scenarios contradict a suicide or accidental jump. By the end of the building investigation, detectives were left with an impossible fall, an inaccessible rooftop, a room that looked cleaned, no video of Ray entering, undamaged personal items, strange elevator activity, a phone call that no one claims, missing surveillance, no witnesses, and a victim who left home suddenly after receiving that call. Everything pointed to mystery. Nothing pointed to clarity. Despite the bizarre evidence, police initially leaned toward one conclusion. Ray Rivera jumped from the Belvedere. But this theory had immediate problems. No access to the rooftop. No path matches the impact hole. Ray had no known history of suicidal behavior. He was making plans for the future. No suicide note. The note found was not a suicide letter. His personal items were intact. The distance required for the fall was physically impossible. The suicide theory simply did not fit the evidence. Even medical analysts stated, the injuries alone cannot determine suicide or homicide. If you can't meaning, the body could not tell the whole story. Some have suggested maybe Ray accidentally fell while exploring the building. But again, he had no reason to climb restricted areas. No one saw him inside. His footwear was inappropriate. No camera captured him. The roof is nearly impossible to reach. The physics do not match an accidental fall. Accident does not match any major piece of evidence. This is the theory most commonly discussed by journalists, documentary filmmakers, online investigators, and Ray's own family. Public theory, Ray was lured to the building. Since the last phone call originated from his workplace switchboard, and no one claimed responsibility for it, some believe Ray may have been called to a meeting, asked to meet someone near the Belvedere, or deceived into going there urgently. This would explain his reaction. Oh my God. Grabs keys, runs out the door. Something unexpected occurred. But without knowing who called him, this theory cannot be confirmed. Public theory B. Ray encountered unknown individuals at the Belvedere. If Ray met someone at the Belvedere, was there a confrontation? Did it escalate? Was he chased? Was he cornered? Did something happen inside a restricted area? But again, there is no surveillance footage to confirm any of this. The missing footage increases speculation, but does not prove wrongdoing. Public theory C. Ray was placed in the room after the fact. Because the hole is difficult to fall through naturally, the room appeared cleaned. The personal items were unbroken. Some people online have asked, did Ray actually fall at that spot, or was his body moved there? To be clear, police never found evidence of body movement, but they also stated, we cannot fully reconstruct what happened, leaving the question open. Public theory D. Ray knew something he shouldn't have known. This theory arises mainly because Ray wrote investigative content. He sometimes helped colleagues research financial topics. He expressed stress about work shortly before disappearing, but there is no direct evidence linking his job to his death. This remains purely speculative. Here is the single biggest problem in the entire case. No theory matches all the evidence at the same time. Let's test them. Suicide doesn't match physics, location, belongings, or behavior. Accident doesn't match timing, access, or physical path. Murder doesn't match lack of defensive signs, lack of surveillance footage, or mystery of access. Body placement doesn't match the timeline or building access restrictions. Secret meeting? No proof of who Ray met or why. In almost every unsolved case, one theory usually fits most of the puzzle. But for Ray Rivera, no single theory fits even half the puzzle. This is extremely rare in real-world cases. Some investigators tried to explore whether Ray showed signs of distress, but every person who knew him, family, friends, co-workers, said he was excited about life, writing a new screenplay, making travel plans, looking forward to the future, deeply in love with Allison, trying to transition to filmmaking, not behaving erratically, even in the days before his disappearance. There were no indications of panic, depression, or danger, except for two things: the 2 alarm incidents. He seemed unusually startled the second night. What triggered those alarms? No one knows. But Allison said he was scared, and Ray was not someone who scared easily. Ray's family has been consistent and clear. Ray did not take his own life. They believe the phone call was crucial. Ray was lured. Something happened inside the Belvedere. The investigation was incomplete. Important people declined to cooperate. Evidence was overlooked or lost. Allison, his widow, said, "Someone knows what happened. Someone out there has answers." She still fights to keep Ray's case open. Baltimore police have never officially reopened the case, but they acknowledge the physics are unexplained. The access path remains unclear. The absence of surveillance footage is problematic. The motive is unknown. The last phone call remains unaccounted for. The medical examiner changed the manner of death to undetermined, not suicide, not accident, not homicide, just undetermined. A rare classification reserved for cases that defy explanation. This case combines elements that rarely appear together. A man who suddenly ran out of the house. A phone call no one claims. A building with restricted access. A fall that physics experts say is impossible. Personal items that defy damage. A room that appears cleaned. Missing surveillance footage. A creative note full of symbolism. A victim with no known enemies. A wound pattern that fits 2 different scenarios. A timeline that doesn't match any theory. It feels like a logic problem with no solvable answer. Every attempt to explain the case creates more contradictions than it resolves. Ray Rivera's death remains one of the most baffling modern mysteries. Was it an accident? A carefully disguised homicide? A fall that defied physics? Or something entirely different, something we haven't imagined yet? We may never know. What we do know is this: someone called Ray that night. Someone triggered his panic. Someone knows why he drove downtown. And someone, somewhere, may still have the missing piece of the puzzle. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive investigation, here at Panda Detective Bureau. If you want more cases like this, cases filled with twists, contradictions, and unanswered questions, don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, stay curious, stay observant, and take care.